2, 1.
Good evening and welcome everyone to the Town of Port Royal Budget Workshop number 3. Today is June 4th, 2025. Time is 5:30. Here we are again. This is our last budget workshop. I believe we'll be voting on the passage of the budget at next meeting, and it will be balanced as required by state statute. So I'll just kind of open that up. I know this was the last one, just to kind of see if there was anything we need to discuss on it. How about, what are some highlights of this budget?
Okay, so right now,
Carl Puckett from the Island Packet wrote a great article
Yes,
summing
thank
it
you.
up there. We appreciate that.
Good article.
just to do a little review, we do have a balanced budget. This year, 2025-26 is $11,135,670. This does include the proposed millage reduction from 74 mills to 72 mills.
Awesome.
The estimated mill value for the town is $78,769. And this budget does include a 3% cost of living adjustment, as well as the additional 2% for the police department, and the increase in all the insurance premiums for vehicles and such.
So 5% for PD, and last year they got 5% as well, right? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And 3% across the board, cost of living, COLA, everybody.
Yes, sir.
And 2 mil reduction, that's quite an accomplishment.
That's awesome.
That's good. Well done, staff.
Yeah.
Well done. $11 million budget, man. Wow.
I think Van said when he got here it was 4, and the mill
When I
was
first
like,
got on council, it was like 5.
really? Yeah.
It was,
5 or 6, it wasn't.
well, Van came out, yeah. So it used to be pretty low when I first came on.
We do a lot with a little, and we still continue to do a lot with a little.
We were in the red back then too, by the way. We're now in the black, so that's a good thing.
Staff feels good about this budget?
Yes, sir.
Yep, and there's one thing just to bring up and talk about it publicly. So one thing that we have discussed and staff has brought to our attention is talking about, and it's always such a weird topic, but compensation for council. And talking about keeping us, is the word's not competitive, because as we've always talked, we don't do this for the money. Just to let you all know, council members in the town of Port Royal make a grand total of $3,600 a year to do the job. Mayor makes a grand total of $4,800 for the job of this. What really was shocking, staff brought up how out of whack that is with literally everyone else.
In the state.
And, in the state, and some towns that are smaller than us, bigger than us and all that. And again, we're not up here for the money. We're all civil servants. We're up here because we love the town of Port Royal. But one thing that I do, and I'm very proud of this council as being, is very forward-thinking, goal-oriented. And so one of the things that I love about our council is when you look at it, it's a very diverse council. And I don't mean the way we look. I mean everybody's stages of life, backgrounds, what they do for careers. It's very diverse, and you don't get that with a lot of councils. You get a lot of people at the same kind of stage of life, came from the same background, and we're very different. And I think that creates a really great representative body for the town, for a cool coastal and far from ordinary town. So we've talked about how do you ensure that? How do we make sure that that people can run for this position and can do it, and no matter where they are, if they're someone young with kids, or if they're retired, or if they're in the middle, or if they're an entrepreneur. How do you make this position to where for future generations, future councils, future mayors, incentivize that diversity of people being able to do this and serve this town? And so that's something that's been brought up to town, been brought up to us by the staff. They're the ones that brought that to us, just like how out of whack those numbers are. So I don't know. I think we've talked about it. We've discussed it. We kind of want to see if we could get us. And again, something too is it's by state statute, councils can't just give themselves raises. Like you vote on it, and it has to be. It's not until the next election, so it's not like if we approved it, it would be now. It has to be after elections that it comes into place. But we did want to, I think, talking, and anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but just wanted to see if staff could look into that and see if we couldn't get more inclined with other municipalities. But however, we do not want to affect our budget in any way. We do not want to change the budget in any way. We want to keep 2 mil reduction don't do anything special for us. Again, this isn't even for us. It really is trying to, somebody's got to make that decision, and, you know, this council is, we try to be about action, and so I think we'll, if it makes sense and we can do it and it doesn't disrupt anything, try to get that ball rolling again for those future council members that will sit up here and those future mayors. So if anybody else wants to add anything to that, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there to staff and see about that. I think that's one last thing we really haven't talked about, and it's always a really, it's a weird thing to talk about.
One
People
thing
only
I
talk
th-
about money, so.
One thing I think people need to understand is we approve the cost of living for everybody. That cost of living doesn't come to us.
Oh, yeah.
When we are by statute, state law, once we run and win our office, we are guaranteed a salary and that's it. When I started in 1992, we are making the same thing. So if we were here for the money, I made a mistake somewhere, I misread. But we do it because it's about our community that we all serve up here. And, you know, it gives us great pleasure to be able to make a difference in our community and do what's right. And I just want to say that, you know, this is something that we've talked about for a while, that we should be up with everybody else. And when you think about it, it's not that we're getting an overload here, but we're just going to be brought up to what everybody else is.
And I think it's very telling when you say that. That is the testament. You're such a good example of that. It's not about the compensation. It's not about the money. The fact that you've been doing this for 30 years and that compensation for council has not changed in over 30 years.
My first election in 1992, y'all.
That's
This is
absolutely
the article
amazing.
from
So-
the paper.
But again, I just wanted to bring that up. It's always awkward, and, you know, but it's, like, again, we try to be a council of action and forward thinking, and so, you know, we'll talk about the tough things if we have to, so. But, yeah.
There is a
I didn't know y'all were getting
spreadsheet.
paid.
It's after your first, you gotta do it 2 years.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like, you guys are
yeah.
getting paid?
You ain't got
That's
paid
kinda cool.
yet. That's what I said. When I won the first election and payday came around, they called me and said, Ms. Hayward, would you like a paper check your first time, or I said, what check?
yeah.
I didn't even know you got one.
No, I mean, neither.
I didn't know I got a salary. I didn't run for the salary. I ran to make a difference.
Yeah.
On the last page of your budget packet, we have done a spreadsheet, just kind of do a review on not only Bluffton, Hilton Head, City of Beaufort, what their budget looks like, as well as what their salary is for council members, mayor, but also jurisdictions that have similar budgets as the town. So we did work up those numbers just to show you guys the difference in that, and I'll put this up on the display because I couldn't find it in the folder.
And again, this is something, we're not saying we're definitely doing it, that we just want to, again, always in the vein of transparency and open to the public, we just want to have staff look into that and see if there is a way to, I mean, there you go, that's a comparison, Walterboro, Pendleton. But, yeah, I mean, some of these other places are a lot larger than us in budget-wise, but, I mean, we all know citizen headcount-wise, we're right there with, I mean, we're bigger than a few of those and right there with the other ones. So, again, if that's just something that y'all could look into and just, if you could let us know what's doable without making any, you know,
Changes.
any changes to anything going forward. What makes sense, you know? And again, like I said, forward thinking, that's us. Jim? Anything else on that?
No.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. No, I broke it down.
Yeah, like I
Thanks.
said, it's, someone's gotta bring it up.
Yeah,
And,
eventually.
but, so that's that, I mean, anything else on the budget here? We've got 20 more minutes. I mean, it's a,
I think it's
I don't know,
great.
it's a big, beautiful budget, huh?
I
Do
think
have
that,
one comment card, one
Good.
comment card. There's one comment card for the budget workshop.
Okay, I was wondering if
And
that
that is
was-
for the budget workshop.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, well, we do have one public comment here from Mr. John O'Toole. Our budget's with the Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation. It's good to see you.
Good to be with you.
Yes, sir.
I didn't make your last meeting. I was actually coming back from the airport, and folks said I should listen to it. So I just wanted to comment on economic development. I do think you deserve more pay, not to couch what I'm about to say. But at the Economic Development Corporation, we live by what we call the 4 promises: don't assume, keep your word, always do your best, and don't take things personally. So as I speak to you tonight, I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything like that. If anything, I'd want to build a path back for Port Royal. And I wanted to correct some things because at the last meeting it was stated, well, I'm not sure what they're doing for us, and they're really focused on industry and things like that. And that's not exactly true. At our founding, Van Willis was on our board, and it was decided that all the towns, Beaufort County was the only county in the state of South Carolina that didn't have an economic development organization. So the mayors got together and then told the county, you've got to really get back into the game. And so as we're preparing to wrap up our fiscal year, which ends at the end of June, and about 7 3/4 of a years into this, we've booked over $800 million worth of investment throughout Beaufort County. And the projects that we've touched have created 3,000 jobs that are averaging about $60,000 a year. And so the thought was that growth anywhere in Beaufort was good for each community. Okay. Then when I was in the position a couple of years, I said, you know, maybe we should do something on a per capita basis. And Van Willis, who was a board member at the time, said, no, we want to be we want to have an equal stake in the corporation. So we didn't go to any kind of per capita. And what I'd like to touch on are, you know, obviously the projects you mentioned are ones that fell into Port Royal, but I would venture to say that the 3,000 jobs really can be gotten by anyone in Beaufort County and Jasper County and Hampton County. But Stoneworks, Perrin, and Shellring are the ones that you know. But what I wanted to touch on was we had a meeting with staff October 23rd, 24, and said, what can we do to help Port Royal? And Greg Shelton has been on our board and has said, hey, you've got to do something, you got to do more for Port Royal, and we have been trying to do that. But, you know, through the passage of property from Witt-Zuber and Butler to Safe Harbor and now Blackstone, we've just never been at the table to negotiate. We've always been told by mayors and staff that we would be brought in at the appropriate time. But keep in mind, a lot of times we bring county resources to a deal to push them over the finish line. And it's not a chance we've had in Port Royal. So I think regardless of how you fund, we're going to continue to serve Port Royal. But I do think that it would be good if Port Royal had, you know, Greg is an at-large member, but somebody who had a passion for economic development sitting at our board table month after month, making sure you're served well. Because we haven't had representation. I'm not pulling any punches there. And so at that meeting, we explained to Van, and I think Noah was there as well as the mayor, that we had a really strong mayor in our county who insisted everything was industrial. But we've moved past that, and we're actually looking at our bylaws. We can serve commercial, the Economic Development Corp. Now, we mentioned at that meeting, if staff from the town of Port Royal would like to attend the International Shopping Center, you know, where you can meet a lot of retailers and stuff like that, we'd be happy to fund that. We asked for a list of properties that the town would like to see redeveloped. We've not received that. We mentioned that we would pursue a retail strategies approach for Port Royal. And my colleague here, Brian Warner, actually walked up and down, checked with staff and with Van to make sure they wanted us to apply. But we've applied for a USDA grant so that we could look at the retail mix for Port Royal. But Brian actually walked down the street in Rebo Road, and at the 11th hour, I think it was Benji, the mortgage guy, wrote was that the final letter you were waiting for? But we got those letters in, and we're doing that with the Southern Carolina Alliance. And now with that, when I was coming back, you had your last budget. I was just overseas, something that we're paying a lot of attention to are fisheries. By 2030, this world needs 58 million metric tons of fish protein. So we're looking at land-based fisheries, wild-caught fisheries, and fish processing. Keep in mind, since I've been here, there's been an insurance settlement for a shrimp processing center in Port Royal. But we were told, well, wait until we get through the negotiations and the property swap. And there's a lot of different people get in the property chain, and these things get dragged out over many years. Is drug a good word or not really? We all know what it means, though, but they get dragged out over many years. But with that, we're paying a lot of attention to that. There's a shrimper out on St. Helena where we're able to get $530,000, 500 from the Department of Ag and 30,000 from county funds, but help this family leverage their resources to make their shrimp dock more viable after it was wiped out. With your plans for a shrimp processing center, or a shrimp processing center, we would be able to bring some resources to help you with that. And let me just see. One other thing I'd mention is that when it was said, well, I don't know what they're doing for us. Every Monday through this whole spring, I was on a conference call every Monday afternoon with a developer who's hoping to do a $75 million healthcare clinic in Port Royal. So we've been on calls on that. It's a competitive project, and we'll see. But we've worked on that as well, and are going to try to assist whoever gets that project with anything we can do in the way of tax credits and so on. So these are a few of the things that we've been doing. And while I'm disappointed with your decision not to fund, not to communicate really with us, and I think we can improve that if you could have a board representative who could be with us month after month to make sure that you know what we're working on. And I probably own half of that communication gap as well, but we have been working very hard for Port Royal. If you could see your way fit to contribute some amount, that would be great. If you can't, we will certainly continue to serve you as a municipality within Beaufort County. And thanks for hearing me out. I think I went beyond 3 minutes. I appreciate the extra time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'd be happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Nope. Yeah. So, no questions. And John, thank you for that. And like I said, we've talked about it. Love the Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation. You guys, as you said, the proof's in the pudding, you're doing a great job. The businesses that you have contributed with here have helped. I mean, they shape who the town is. I mean, the Show Ring, Perrin, Stonework, those are great. Again, as I was saying to you, it was really just about us trying to hit goals, hit specific goals that we have. And I was thinking about that one right there. We got the must do, continue fostering relationships with port developments. We're doing that. We try to be goal oriented up here. That's why we're voting tonight on development agreements and PUD amendments for that. Number 2, promote local businesses by exploring incentives to stimulate economic activity in the downtown area. We also got under a could do, develop strategies of making Paris Avenue a key destination. And so that's really just, we're trying to figure out how to do that. And that was what that revenue source was about. We thought it maybe just be better to spend that more in the downtown area. I say that is not a decision. This is just one budget for 1 year. I mean, this is just how do we meet these goals. My goal, I can tell you, is by the end of this year, I want to look at all those and say we've done them. I want to put a check by all of those. And next year is a different year with a different budget. And once we've got certain balls rolling this way, then we can look into putting funds back into other places, that will. But right now we do have, as you know, in government, limited money. A goal was to lower taxes with the 2 mills, and so that's really all it is about us, and I hope that comes across. And I apologize again about the communication. I could have done better by letting you know about that before we just talked about it in a meeting, so that one's on me too. But again, I just want you to know that we look forward to continue to work with the Development Corp. You guys do a great job, but we just want to, like I said, we want to hit these goals. So that's kind of just where we're coming from. So open it up to council with anything else.
No, I mean, I hear you on Stoneworks, Pear, and Shellring. I think those are good projects. I don't know how many projects you have in the works now and how many are earmarked for Port Royal. Do you have a list, or, hey, we've got, 20 projects and this many is in Port Royal? I don't know. I don't know what the projects are. I have no idea. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and just so you know, we have 3 staff members focused on this, myself, Brian, and Kelly Brunson. We probably average 9 or 10 hours. So I don't know how not funding it, you get that kind of coverage with 40,000. We've worked at economic development for probably a combined 35 years, or 32 years, I'll say. And so we work really hard at it. Projects that we have been monitoring for Port Royal. Well, one is we're going to get a list in October. We met October 23rd. And we're going to get a list of the properties that Port Royal wanted us to focus on. We haven't gotten that list yet. But the health clinic that I mentioned is one we're working on. The redevelop, and it's not really spoken about in public, but it's pretty obvious with all the different dominoes that will fall. The redevelopment of the Naval Hospital is one that we talk to developers about. When I left our last board meeting, I met a developer who was in conversations with Port Royal. I haven't been brought into that. I was talking to him at a wake on May 8th, but we would work with that developer on the project that I believe is projected for the fish dock, or the shrimp dock. And so those would be the ones that are on our radar screen today. Brian's been working with retailers. Who was it? Zenden, and we're talking about working kind of a Main Street type project, or just walking the street to find out what people like. But we like to bring in the retail strategies as well, or that's just one vendor, but that kind of concept. But I would say, the healthcare clinic, the Naval Hospital are probably the significant ones that could make a difference. And so when you look at budgeting, and you can look at it the way you do, but if you increase revenue, you can do more for your residents, and that's why communities invest in economic development, because if we can attract a grand list growth, you can do more for your residents.
Well, I think we are going to continue to invest in economic development, but just maybe take a different approach to it. I'd
be curious to see what you could, with your millage drop, and then with the budgeting, what you can get done. I would encourage you, even if you go this route, to have staff work with us, because the Department of Ag they actually lined up 9 leads for us in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and in London. You don't have that kind of network here. I mean, one of the challenges we have is just communication. And when people are overworked, communicating becomes even tougher. That's our experience, right? I mean, we met on October 23rd. We're going to have a plan to move forward. Nothing was done on it. And so, when you're doing a lot with a little, it's harder to stretch it even further. I would venture to say that hopefully with board representation, better communication, you can, however you decide to approach this, you can leverage your approach by working with us. I mean, the department. I'm on my way from here. I've got to drive 3.5 hours to a conference where I'll be with leading economic developers from around the state of South Carolina. And it's a very collegial environment where people share ideas, tell how they're doing things, not being plugged into that network, not being plugged into the network of site selectors, not being in the network of having a web presence or a program on WHHI and getting that message out. There's just so many different layers to economic development. and maybe we make it look easy. And I think it's tough for me to say what I'm saying, because I think our special sauce is humility. But now I'll tell you, we're damn good at it. We're good at it. And we can do great things for Port Royal. Let's just talk more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
No,
you.
and I can tell you this, John, I could tell you, we have no intention of not working with the Development Corporation. That's going to happen. We can get you a good board member. Every single person in the town of Port Royal is a Beaufort County resident, and we want to see nothing but everybody succeed. So don't worry about that. We continue to keep working with you, absolutely. So,
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Anything else from council?
Nothing.
Okay. We got 4 minutes, so we want to try and get a little, oh, wait. Jim, okay. We have 4 meetings scheduled tonight, so I'm getting them all lined up. All right, next one's at 6, so do we want to close out the budget workshop? Is there anything else from staff?
We have our directive, so we'll see what we can.
Okay, you good?
Numbers.
Okay. You good, Mr. Ashmore?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. All right, well, we'll adjourn this and meet back in 3 minutes if you need to grab a water, use the restroom. And we're back. Thank you. We are now back. We had to call a special meeting for June 4th, 6 PM, special meeting here. And just to, call of order. Since this is, we are voting, let's do it right. Pledge of Allegiance.
Councilman Pereira, if you could lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It doesn't say it on there, but if you can read it.
Sure.
and,
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the blessings of life. And Lord, thank you for this opportunity that you give us to talk about the business of our community. Lord, be with each person here tonight and give us the courage and the wisdom, the words and the discernment to make decisions that are pleasing in your sight. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Okay. First reading, so we've got, when's our immediately following? Workshop. Okay, so we got a public hearing at 30 minutes. So thank you, everyone, for being here and everyone watching online. To kind of give you a little background, because we don't call a lot of special meetings, so you might be thinking, why is this so special? And it is very special. We're actually tonight doing our first readings, getting on the books our agreement with Safe Harbor. We have Safe Harbor representatives here, and so we thank y'all for being here very much. It means a lot to see y'all in the room and see y'all here. So we thank you for being here. I know you're here. If we have any questions, y'all are here for that, and that's great. So just so the public's aware, as you know, last year we sat down and we negotiated kind of back and forth with Safe Harbor, going back and forth with issues that they had, just like any partnership. And we kind of got in a room and hashed those out, and that kind of created, if you were looking forward to, if you've been keeping up with the story, up in February, we released our settlement agreement that we came out and we all voted on and accepted that. That laid out pinpoints for us, for the town to do, action items for Safe Harbor to do, and that was just a settlement agreement. Then at this point, now has to be formalized into the development agreement and the PUD, the Planned Unit Development. Those are the guiding documents that guide the development of the Safe Harbor property over here that we're all very excited about. I talked about earlier, our goals and our must-dos, continue fostering relationship with port developers. That's number one must-do. We recognize how important this project is, and we have not taken our eye off the ball. We've made a promise to the community to do that, and we've done that. This council's done that. This staff has done that. Our attorneys have done a great job with that, and also Safe Harbor has been very willing and great partners in this process. And so we're calling a special meeting tonight so we can have first reading of the ordinances. I'm going to ask our attorney in a minute to give a brief description of what those are. And the reason why we're calling the special one is so we can meet our guidelines and continue doing what we said we were going to do. If you remember, in February, we were to have all of these documents done within 90 days. If you remember, I think 2 meetings back, we extended it, I think 30 or 45 days, because the attorneys came and they said, this is a lot to get done in 90 days. Can we get a little bit longer? But it was all to be done within June. That was our deadline, was essentially middle of June, all of it needed to be done. The only way that works is for us to have first reading for these ordinances tonight, so that at our council meeting on next Wednesday, we can have second reading, and then they will be finalized, and everybody can get to work and get moving. So that's why we're doing this tonight. That's what is so special. This is what we call a special meeting. But I would consider what we're talking about tonight and what we're voting on very, very special to the town of Port Royal, if not one of the most important things going on in the town. So at this time, I would ask, before we get into the ordinances, if Lawrence would like to come up and just kind of give everybody just a real quick, not rough, but just kind of overall, what are we voting on tonight? What do these ordinances do? And just kind of anything you need from us, any decisions, any guidance you need from council, we're here for that. But if you could just, for us, for the public, and for the press, and for transparency purposes, just kind of, how did we get here, and what are we doing, Lawrence?
I'll take that direction from
Yeah.
y'all. So guys, how we have gotten here, and it's been a bit of an ordeal to get to this point. The mayor alluded to the several series of conversations that have happened with respect to the port development. We entered into a settlement agreement, basically settling all the outstanding claims between the city and the Safe Harbor Development Team back in February. On the basis of that settlement agreement, we laid out some pretty particular parameters around what the terms of that settlement were going to look like. As we got into it, the kind of the high-level options and the high-level things that we identified pretty much right off the bat were that we were going to need to do some pretty significant changes to the planned unit development that already exists for the site. And then it also necessitates additional changes to the development agreement that locks in certain development obligations, as well as locks in the planned unit development status for the term of the development agreement. And then on top of that, in addition to the conversations around the settlement agreement, there are a lot of things in the existing development agreement and also referred to in the PUD, the existing PUD, that required some property transactions and some swaps and stuff back and forth. So tonight you have 3 ordinances in front of you. The terms of the first ordinance are the approval of a new planned unit development for the entirety of the Safe Harbor owned property. The second ordinance is a approval of a third amendment to the development agreement affecting those same properties. And then the third ordinance is an ordinance which I kind of call the omnibus property transfer ordinance, which is the conveyance of a whole bunch of property interests that we can talk through exactly what those are, but were part of the considerations on some of the original property swaps, some considerations for the purchase and acquisition of Lot G, which I know the town has talked about for a long time as being part of the acquisition of the beer garden property in exchange for some in-town lots, and the forgiveness of the obligations under the existing development agreement, which required the conveyance of $150,000 towards the construction of a new seafood processing facility. So all of that has effectively been cleaned up by these documents. We could go as in depth on any of them as you otherwise want to, but that's kind of the high level of what we wanted to accomplish through the terms of the settlement agreement. And then this is the first step towards memorializing those next steps. And so under the terms of the settlement agreement, all of that now had to be done by effectively the end of June. Called the special meeting tonight so that we could make sure we had first reading. If there were any questions, we could obviously deal with those in advance of second reading next week. We've already had public hearings on both of these documents that are on the PUD and the development agreement. Those were both held in front of your planning commission last week. During the process of the planning commission, and I think y'all probably saw that, the original draft of the PUD as presented to the planning commission amended and restated the entire zoning arrangement for the development. One of the material concerns and considerations that council wanted to make sure was in that document was a cap on what we call rental units, which was a concern around the ability to develop build-to-rent housing. We identified what that terminology is. We restricted and have do not permit multi-story multifamily facilities, and then there's a 15% cap on rental units as they're described, which would include and encompass build-to-rent facilities as well. In the aftermath of the planning commission, or during the discussion of the planning commission, a comment was also brought up, and the recommendation from the planning commission came to you to also address short-term rentals, which was not in the original draft that was originally presented. And that's a more town-specific function around trying to make sure you maintain your neighborhood districts. You have an existing short-term rental ordinance that is already in place that creates 5 independent districts in the town with a 6% cap on short-term rentals. Obviously, y'all are very familiar with that. You've been through the teeth-pulling exercise of putting that ordinance in place. The Ports property was originally not incorporated into the regulatory plan with your short-term rental ordinance. And so the amendments that have been recommended by your planning commission were to put in the new PUD document some restrictions on short-term rentals. And so the way that it has been proposed, and we've had some conversations with Safe Harbor, who's obviously going to be regulated by this new planned unit development, we're going to effectively create a 6th district, which would consist of the Port of Port Royal property. And so the 6% short-term rental restriction that exists in all the existing districts would also apply now as a 6th district only applicable to the Port of Port Royal, which would be in addition, theoretically, to the 15% cap that already exists.
That was my question.
And the reason for that was, and we thought that was done in kind of a sense of fundamental fairness, we don't know what the long-term development plans are for the residential portions of the development. And what we didn't want to create is some like mandatory 15% cap, where if a developer had some plans to put in some form of rental housing, be it a townhome development, some form of rental uses in their facility, and then they sell the single-family residential before they finish their multifamily piece or whatever resident or rental piece they want to put in place, and all of a sudden that restricts out the ability to be able to develop their development as they see fit without them being at the table, we thought was potentially unfair. At the end of the day, that's ultimately council's discretion, but that is the version of the PUD that you have in front of you tonight, is a standing 15% cap on rental units, and then a separate and distinct 6% cap as a new district under your existing short-term rental ordinance.
I think that's fair.
Perfect. And so then, as far as additional changes, we went through the process of updating the regulating plan. That was frankly part of the kind of the larger discussion and the back and forth, making sure that the updates corresponded to the conversations that had been had with your planning staff and adhere to kind of the long-term vision for the way the property was supposed to be developed, specifically around the incorporation of the Spanish Moss Trail into the northern edge of the development, and then the pedestrian promenade, which is obviously a council vision that was part of the original process that we want to make sure gets dealt with. That regulating plan is obviously not a master plan. We haven't seen master plan design for the development, but the whole idea of the PUD is to give some flexibility around what that long-term development looks like, but also give Safe Harbor and their future development partners some flexibility and some understanding around what the development is going to look like. And so have those same limitations on open space requirements and on certain land uses in various areas. Again, we flipped and we memorialized the terms of the flip on some of the civic open space. So you may remember the switch between the PV6 property and the London Avenue Park. We memorialized that in the terms of the new regulating plan. You had formally done that by ordinance accepting the switch of those, but the numbers didn't tie out from the terms of the old planned unit development. We also moved the spot of the old Paris Avenue Park. It shows up on the regulating plan now, but it's not definitively determined as to where that spot's going to be because, frankly, we don't know exactly the way the development is going to break out. But there is an obligation that a 1 acre park or a park of at least 1 acre in aggregate size within the PV 123 area of the regulating plan gets developed, in addition to that 5% open space requirement that still exists throughout the development. So I think it's a pretty good blend of the regulatory overlay that council has stated on a number of occasions that you want to see, along with the flexibility for Safe Harbor to move forward with the development and design of the dock facilities that they intend to construct on site. I will also say lots of conversations were put around this idea of the former light industrial usage. That's been removed from the existing version of the PUD. We've tied out all of the defined terms to specifically identify the uses that are permitted, and basically manufacture of docks on site is not going to be a permitted use. It's basically the ability to come and use it as a laydown to be able to put their docks on and do construction as necessary to put them into the river, but it's not going to be used as an active construction site for alternative uses. And so that was one of those things that was obviously a material concern in the settlement agreement and is now memorialized under the terms of the PUD. Moving into the development agreement, I know we're kind of talking about all of these things moving in different pots, but they all do kind of work together as kind of a consolidated document, or a consolidated set of documents. A lot of the provisions around the development agreement were just some clarifications because things that existed in the former versions of the documents concerning the fuel facilities, the dock facility conveyances, the seafood facility conveyances, all of those have effectively been addressed at this point. Again, we alluded to earlier that $150,000 commitment that Safe Harbor had, or the developer under the original development agreements had this obligation to designate property to be constructed as a seafood facility. In the second amendment to the development agreement right before Safe Harbor purchased the property, that authorization was changed to remove the acreage responsibility in exchange for that $150,000 contribution if a spot wasn't identified. That's been kind of lying out there in abeyance for the last several years because we hadn't identified where it was going to be. What we've identified effectively is that council all along has had an eye on Lot G, knowing that that is a material portion between Fish Camp and the brewery. It's also the access point for the future town dock facilities. And so that gives you direct access into that. That is going to be memorialized in the terms of the third ordinance that you have in front of you tonight, which is accepting the receipt of that Lot G facility or that Lot G property in exchange for some other conveyances that we'll talk about here in a second. But really at a high level, that's kind of the main thoughts behind the plan unit development and the development agreement amendments. Moving on to the property conveyances, there are obviously there's a lot of interplay between the town and Safe Harbor. We recognize that the port development is effectively in your backyard. And so we've alluded to already the Lot G facility and the beer garden property, which are going to now be explicitly acquired by the town. The exchange for that is the forgiveness of that $150,000 seafood commitment. That's memorialized under the terms of the new development agreement because it's not actually in there anymore, so that obligation is not there. We are then transferring 5 in-town lots that have previously been identified as part of the property. I'm turned around right now, but yeah, right over here. And so those are part of the backside of the development that Safe Harbor may be able to use, or their development partners may be able to use at some point in the future. That's kind of the baseline conveyance transaction that started that authorization because we knew we wanted Lot G and the beer garden property. But in addition to that, it was also identified that the Henry Robinson Boardwalk runs across the Marsh property, which was part of the conveyance to Safe Harbor through Gregos from the State Ports Authority, and you have a existing boardwalk facility that operates there. There's not clean documentation that shows us that we have a regulated license to have that boardwalk there. So we've memorialized that as well, that we now actually have legal rights to maintain the boardwalk. There's some requirements that we continue to maintain it, and if we decide we don't want to for a successive period of 48 months, subject to force majeure, if a hurricane came and stopped us from using it, there is a right of reverter. If we decided we just wanted to never use it again, the property goes back to Safe Harbor is the way that it's otherwise set up. You'll also recognize that there's an existing footpath that's effectively been developed because folks use the boardwalk and then wander through the Marsh facilities. There's a separate part of the license that also now allows us to build elevated boardwalk facilities, basically coming off the tower into the area that is the existing marsh. That needs to be built by 2032, connecting to the beer garden property, and then with a separate additional connector that needs to be built by 2036. I think that's more than sufficient time to be able to complete and finish out that project. Then in addition to that, there are some general little road ends and some things that were identified associated with the previous transaction associated with you receiving the Sands Beach boat landing, and then some little identified properties that were identified through some of the title work that were never transferred. There's also some road end conveyances that were originally considered under some of the original developments that were never done. And so this ordinance 25-9, the reason I call it the omnibus property transfer ordinance is because it's effectively doing all of those transactions and validating them at once. And so attached to it are copies of all of the deeds associated with the various conveyances that are going to be recited. If you're really, really bored and want just a recital of what I've talked about, you can read the findings of fact, which effectively lay out all the parameters of all of those conveyances in the form and fashion in which they're intended. And so assuming that council is comfortable with all of these documents tonight and you decide to move forward with first reading of all 3 ordinances, the next step would obviously be second reading next week, which gives us sufficient time under state law with a 7-day intervening period between first and second reading, at which point the PUD and the development area would then be formally recorded, as well as all the other deed documents that are here, along with the plats that have been developed that show all of these various property transfers occurring, and then just relative to the settlement agreement. Once all of that occurs, those are kind of the final jumping off items that are needed to formally release all of the pending claims that have been held in abeyance by the courts while we work through all of these settlement obligations that need to be done. So there won't need to be a subsequent action taken by council, but I did want you to be aware that, assuming everything goes as planned tonight and its second reading next week, we would then formulate the plans to make sure that the settlement agreement gets formally finalized and all the existing claims get released.
Yeah.
I know that's a lot of information
No.
dumped at one time, so
And
if
then
y'all
one
have any
thing, just to-
questions,
just to,
certainly
you know,
ask.
let everybody know, and because I just wanted to give kudos to our partners with Safe Harbor and you mentioned it, and people are going to see that, like Henry Robinson Boardwalk, and it was like, oh yeah, that not until you got in, it was like, oh yeah, that's on Safe Harbor's property. There was a part of Sands Beach right beside the boat landing, right?
Correct.
That they had property on Sands Beach. And that was really kind of telling, I think, to myself. I can tell you when people were negotiating, going back and forth, they were the ones that said, this has no value to us. Y'all can just take that. Like, there was no pushback on any of that. They're recognizing that these are valuable to the town. I mean, they could have been, said, oh, this is our property and we want this and we want that. And it really wasn't like that. And that was, like I said, just giving kudos to Safe Harbor for that partnership and working with it and recognize, well, the boardwalk is part of the town. They should have it. Like, what are we talking about? And then the attorneys figured out, how to do that and get the deeds right and everything like that. So, because it is interesting, you see Henry Boardwalk on, you're like, what is that doing there? It's like, that was on Safe Harbor's property. Like, nobody really knew until you got in there, you pulled all the deeds, and it was, whoa, okay. So, just, it is a lot of property swapping going on in one ordinance, but I know y'all put in a lot of work, and just kind of some big highlights. I'll lay them out from the town's point of view. Let me know if I'm wrong. The big things, just to reiterate, and like you said, you can go back and look at our settlement agreement, is capping rentals at 15%, the town getting the property that you just talked about, so Spanish Moss Trail, Lot G, the beer garden over there by Sands Beach, and then the Marsh property through that.
And the only thing I would clarify, y'all have already taken action, obviously.
Yep.
They had already conveyed the temporary easement for Spanish Moss Trail crossing Rebo Road, so that we made sure we had that curb cut that continued. So that's not part of this
Yeah, that was
memorialized
already good.
authorization, but that is an action that previously occurred prior to actually, right after the settlement agreement was done. It was the very first action. that we
We've
did.
got in there, regularly scheduled meetings, like you talked about, regulating plan, talking about the timeline kind of going forward. So again, I think it's another, it's a big, beautiful bill, and, you guys did a great job. I mean, really, it's hard to really say. I mean, think about where we were, and I can tell you, Noah, Safe Harbor, Van staff, they put in, we'll get the bill for the hours, but it's a lot of hours. They put in a lot of work for it. And I don't know, I'm talking about it because we've come a long way. I'm really proud, I'm really excited, this whole council, and again, talking about goals, it's right there, and we're doing it right now. So, any questions from council for?
No, you covered it well, thank you.
Yeah.
Everything
Thank you.
seemed like we got it all worked out.
All right, well,
One
way down to
thing,
the
one thing I would
promenade.
add, just so.
yep, promenade's in there, yep.
That
The-
one better stay.
The one thing that does occur, obviously, through the new development agreement is it extends the term of the existing development agreement for an additional 5 years, which is expressly permitted under the statute. That was a consideration of the settlement agreement. I just didn't mention that earlier. So it'll start a new timeline from June the 11th, 2025, assuming y'all obviously take action to do so, through June the 11th of 2030.
Okay.
And there's a schedule built out of how the development is intended to move from that point. So I
Okay.
just want to make sure I made a point.
Cool.
With that, I'll ask Safe Harbor, thank y'all for being here. Does that all sound good to y'all? Any questions, any comments?
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
It was
Come on up front.
pretty accurate lead portrayed, I was saying. Mostly thanks to Lawrence and Nicole for working through the legal dynamics of it all. And so we're looking forward to keeping the momentum that
Yeah.
we've got. And I'm sorry Colby couldn't be here with us today, but either way, just want to thank you all for continuing to work with us, and we'll continue to dig in as well. So, thank you.
We appreciate it. We're excited. We're excited for the future, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, with that, I will entertain a motion that we adopt 2025-7, an ordinance to amend and restate the planned unit development for the Port of Port Royal Tract originally enacted by ordinance 2011-17, as amended by ordinance 20-1720, and ordinance 2021-25, and other matters related thereto.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any more discussion or comment? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. Next, number B, we've got an ordinance. I'll entertain an ordinance. Entertain a motion that we approve ordinance 2025-8, an ordinance to further amend the development agreement between the town of Port Royal, South Carolina, and Safe Harbor Port Royal LLC under the terms of that certain third amendment to the development agreement and other matters related thereto.
So moved.
Get a second?
Second.
Any more discussion or comments? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Last but not least, ordinance 2025, I'll entertain a motion that we approve 2025-9, an ordinance to authorize the exchange for certain properties with Safe Harbor Marinas Port Royal LLC, wherein the town of Port Royal shall transfer by deed certain properties to the town to Safe Harbor Port Royal LLC, and the town shall accept deeds to certain properties from Safe Harbor Marina Port Royal LLC. Acceptance of property and license rights related to Henry Robinson Boardwalk and planned extensions thereto. Ratifying the acceptance of the Sands Beach Boat Landing and related dock facilities, ratifying conveyance of that certain perpetual easement for public use and access, and other matters related thereto.
So moved.
Get a second. Any comments? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. All those unanimous. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so our special meeting is now adjourned. We'll see you back in 2 minutes at 6:30 for the next meeting, meeting 3 of 4 tonight, our public hearing. Okay, and we are back for, what are we in? Meeting-
Public hearing?
Meeting number 3 of 4 tonight. So, this is June 4th, 2025, Town of Port Royal, 6:30, public hearing. We've called the meeting to order. The purpose of this is to have a public hearing on ordinance 2025-5, an ordinance to amend the following section 1 of ordinance 2024-10 to provide for the levy of taxes for ordinary town purposes in the town of Port Royal, South Carolina for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025, and to provide for the expenditures thereof. Do we have any public comments on the budget? Hearing none, I will move into public comment for 2025-6. An ordinance to approve the court department budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025. Any public comment on the court budget for July 21st, 2025? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That was a good meeting.
It's quick.
All right, number 3. Now we're to meeting number 4. We still good, Sean? Yeah. Okay. All right. Meeting number 4 tonight, July 4th, 2025, council workshop. Called the meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda for tonight is an interview. Beaufort County Solid Waste and Recycle Board District number 6. I believe we have one applicant, correct?
Correct.
And that applicant is Mr. Jim Barry. If you could come on down and tell us why you're better than all the other applicants.
Because you're the only one?
I'm alive.
He said, I apply, I put my name in the hat.
Put my own mirror.
I put my name on the list. Well, yes, sir. Thank you so much for being here. And, if you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then council might have some questions for you.
All right, I've been in Port Royal full-time since 2019, moved down from Lexington, South Carolina. Did 20 years as a base engineer with the Air Force, graduated from Clemson, civil engineering, and
You're already in. You're in, you got it.
and then did 20 years with the South Carolina Department of Mental Health, running their physical plant. And my wife shamed me into volunteering for this. She's been helping y'all with a lot of committees and everything, and I've been retired for 10 years now and playing golf and fishing, and decided I need to give a little back. So I've got a little bit of a history with base engineering. In fact, one of my first jobs when I got it, that was 50 years ago, was managing the landfill at the Air Force base that we had. So,
Okay. Yes, sir.
and I'm a little interested in the recycling program. We did some of that, and I'd like to see where that's going.
I think he's a great candidate for the
I
position.
think you could too, Cliff.
Based
I mean,
on,
what more do we
yeah,
need?
based on your history and your experience, I think it's a no-brainer. So I want to say thank you for your willingness to serve. We certainly do appreciate that. Thank you.
I just need to, I guess, sit down with some of y'all and find out what the town's wishes are and what you
sir.
want.
And we can
would
do,
like
we
for
can
me
set
to
that
run.
up.
Said it.
Any
Thank you
comments?
for volunteering.
No,
Yes,
thanks.
sir. And I'll just
Appreciate
say,
your time.
I was giving, joking at the beginning, but I do mean it. Anyone that signs up for any volunteer position and wants to set up and serve the town, we appreciate that and could not do it without you. So we really do appreciate it. And I think we're voting next week at our council meeting on it. So thank you so much, Mr. Barry. You have a good evening. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, up next, council briefing.
All right, well, this evening, I am going to introduce Noah Krebs and Ms. Lauren, and they're going to be going over an update and review for the zoning code that
Okay.
they've been working on. Yes.
Good evening. So we are going to be going over the code amendments that the two of us and the Planning Commission have been working on for 8 months. Yeah, I think about 8 months at this point. To date, we have had 6 or 7 Planning Commission work sessions, and time is escaping me now, but I think it was last week that the Planning Commission met and recommended approval unanimously of the proposed code amendments. So I'm just going to, I know we've given you great detail summaries of all of the nitty gritty. What I want to do here is kind of tie it all together and just explain how we feel we're accomplishing the goals that we set out to meet at the beginning of this process. So the number one priority, and actually the reason that we started a full review of the code, is that council imposed a multifamily moratorium, a moratorium on any multifamily development in the town 1 year ago and some change. And so part of that moratorium is that staff and the Planning Commission were tasked with a review of our multifamily regulations, their effects on the town and the public's health, safety, and welfare. And so when we started that task, it snowballed into doing a holistic look at the code as well and making sure that everything is humming and operating the way that it needs to. And so I worked with Lauren, and we came up with some ideas for how to address specifically the multifamily issues that we were seeing, namely that over the last 25 years, the town has continued to annex properties across the Battery Creek into the municipal limits. With that comes opportunities for growth, and it's kind of been a sentiment that possibly that growth hasn't been exactly the type of growth that we want to see, specifically large apartment complexes with massive buildings that all look the same and kind of don't continue the character of the town out into the western parts of the town. So one of the things that we are proposing is standards for diversity of building types within new neighborhoods, within new developments. So in developments that are more than 20 building sites or more than 72 units, with this standard, developers will be required to build a mix of the housing types that we have in our code within each block of the development, and then a diversity throughout the entire site. What that does is it eliminates the ability to build a massive apartment complex where each building is 24 to 36 units. Each building looks exactly the same, and there's not much character to it. I think I didn't update. But the other thing that we're doing there is kind of building out the building types that we do allow to emphasize what we call the missing middle housing types. That would be between 2 and 12 units. So things like duplexes and triplexes, 4 to 6 unit plexes that look similar to a large single-family home but have multiple units. Really pushing housing choices in each development that we review and approve in the town. Then the other larger amendments that we're proposing that do affect multifamily or could affect multifamily are certain alternative development patterns. We'll go over all of these in detail, but just as a quick shot, small-scale planned infill development, which is similar to a clustered development, traditional neighborhood development floating overlay, which you'll see is similar to a planned unit development or a PUD, but a little more on the town side than it is on the developer side, and then cottage courts, which are also known as pocket neighborhoods. Go to the next one, please, Brooke. So this is a look at small-scale planned infill development. In simplest terms, what it does is it allows clustered subdivisions or clustered development. So a developer could look at a site, and the town could look at the site and determine that there might be natural resources or topography that are important and could contribute to the site, rather than removing vegetation and grading that area for development. And so these standards allow that flexibility in design. We have seen development and reviewed it that we've tried to implement similar standards. In fact, Lauren's firm was one that submitted an application for that, and that's what I thought. She mentioned this to me, and it looked like a great idea, so we looked into it further. And so with this, a developer could look at the lot sizes and the dimensional requirements in a zoning district and say, you know, we can do this, but we have to remove everything on this site to get the numbers we need. And now the town has the ability to say, well, let's reduce some lot sizes and cluster where you are developing on this site to preserve the natural environment or the natural amenities that might be there. but you won't lose your density because you can build on lots that are 40 feet instead of 75 or whatever it might be. So balances out, and it allows opportunities to do things like preserve the natural amenities that are already there. And I thought I updated the presentation right before I left the office at 5 o'clock, but it hasn't been. But one thing I can point out here on this example, which is not the best example because it's not necessarily the type of development we want to see in the town, but you can see a strip on the right that is a dark space through there, through the street and across the site. And that's something that's could conceivably be a thing that's built into our tree ordinance already, which we call a wildlife corridor. So it's just a little idea of something that you can do with these types of developments. If it were in a greenfield area on that other side of town, you could look at the site and say, let's preserve a wildlife corridor through this development that allows the natural areas around it to connect for the wildlife. And we don't need to mass grade an entire site to have good development and efficient development. Next one, please. The next alternative pattern is traditional neighborhood district development floating district. What this does is allows a developer to look at our codified zoning districts and their regulations and kind of flesh out what is similar to a planned unit development. So what that does is allows more mixed use, allows more housing choice, which also ties in the diversity of building types that we talked about before. And it kind of prevents those subdivisions that are large lot, single family, and don't really provide any kind of daily needs that people need nearby their homes, which is contributing to the traffic problems that we see every day around here. And so what happens is, if you look at a 30-acre site off of Castle Rock Road, which is in the town, and that site is zoned T4 Neighborhood Center. We have the zoning regulations for that district, and they could develop that way, or they could choose to work with the town and design a regulating plan that has allocations for multiple zoning districts. So they could take the T4 Neighborhood Center base zoning and allocate 10 or 15% of that. I'm just throwing the numbers out, but they're close to this. 10 or 15% for Main Street zoning in the center of the development, and then 45% could still be that T4, and then whatever the remainder is, the 25% could be T3, and it could be larger single-family lots that might be on the water or out towards the edge of the development. So it kind of gets that mixed-use feel and allows flexibility on how to design that. One of the cool things that I think accomplishes something else that we've discussed about with this is with the largest sites, it requires that space is set aside for civic buildings or civic uses. When I say that, I don't necessarily mean amenities, but more so services. So, a quarter acre could be set aside for if the town decides that a police substation is needed in that development, or a fire fire station is needed in that development. And then the town can work with the management or the master developer, if they're still involved, and figure out how to provide those services as a substation in the development. And that has a lifespan. They may have to allow that for 10 years, and then they can develop it if the town decides it's not necessary. But it is something we've talked about as a need in the near future, so thought it was necessary to include that there. The third alternative pattern was previously a building type in the code, but it's not really a single building type. It's more so a group of buildings. And so Lauren has helped flesh that out into much more detailed standards. And that's the cottage court. And in simplest terms, that looks exactly like what you see on the screen, which might be a small group of single-family homes with a courtyard or common outdoor space in the middle where their porches front, and then parking space in the back or along an alley behind the homes, depending on the design. So it's space efficient because you could use an 150-foot lot in town and put 6 homes there, and they could be small cottages. which makes them a good housing choice for first-time buyers. The layout of this type of development is good for young families because the kids can go outside and play in the open area, still feel like they're hanging out in the neighborhood without running the streets. And it's great for aging in place because this doesn't necessarily have to just be residential. It could also have a caretaker living within one of the houses. Could be a situation where certain medical needs are met on site, while folks who are aging can live in a single-family home and remain in the neighborhood that they're comfortable in. So those are three different things that we're including here.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
Like with that last example, what's in there and what's been done with the, about parking, making sure that parking's on site? I mean, if you, like you said, 6 homes, where are those 12 cars gonna go?
Yeah, so the bottom-
Are each one of those required to have 2 spots on site and?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's parking standards specific. The bottom line is, these types of developments are allowed, but that doesn't mean that they can be accommodated anywhere.
Yeah.
So if somebody doesn't think that the project is feasible unless they do 5 units, then they find out they don't have the space to meet the parking requirements around those 5 units, then they have to either reduce the number of units or look elsewhere. So parking requirements have been looked at.
Yeah.
Generally, I think we've looked at other design standards for sites and single-family lots that were holding back the ability to make sure that parking needs are met. And I think we've done that with looking at the off-street parking standards, and looking at sizes of carriage houses and that kind of thing.
Great. Yeah, because we've talked about that. That's just one of my concerns going forward, and I think you all have addressed it, but just that as Port Royal continues to grow and become more of a tourist destination, which it's going to do, where do the cars go? So is
Yeah.
residents parking on their property and trying to have as much, parking within the town for the people that are here to, walk around and enjoy the town as possible. So, but I've said that, I've said that to you many times.
And slightly off topic, but we are working on moving forward with some kind of study for downtown parking as well, which is on your should do. So Brooke hasn't mentioned that. We are working on that. Brooke, is there a second slideshow? Or is there a second presentation in that
This is
folder?
the only
Because I
one.
updated it, but it doesn't have the sketches that.
Hold on, let me, I'll do a refresh in the folder and see if that
It's-
might pop up.
That should be it right there.
Can I just ask you,
Sure.
because I know it's a lot of work, but as someone that does both of you
Oh.
two, I want to hear from both of you on this. What is, out of all the things that you did in this project, what's the one that excites you the most? What's the part of it that you think, like you just said, like, with one part, you're like, the really cool part is, so is there a section that you're like, man, that was awesome what we just did there?
I think it's this.
Okay, cool.
And we now have the sketches that Lauren's team worked on, and I'm going to
Okay.
hand it over to her to explain exactly what it is. It relates to the diversity of building types for new
Okay.
development that we talked about, so.
That'd kind of be my favorite too.
Yeah, I think that there's actually, whenever you're writing a code or amending a code or looking at it, the first place you do, or I mean, really just doing anything in this kind of realm, the first best practice is always see what are other people doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we looked a lot at other kind of similar codes and in similar locations, and there actually aren't very many places that I think do this as comprehensively as we're proposing to do in this code, which is, one, you already had this kind of like palette of building types, which are really good. That's a detached house, a townhouse, a cottage, a 2 to 3 unit building. And then right now, the current ordinance kind of jumps from that 2 to 3 unit building, maybe 4 unit, up to like unlimited multifamily in the building types. And it doesn't say that explicitly, but it says that effectively by the time you add in all of the exceptions and everything. And so it's very difficult to say, well, I want to be able to allow a 2 to 3 unit building or a 4 to 6 unit building in this zone, but I don't want to be able to have anything more than 6 units. So I think one thing that was important that we did is kind of like added a couple of these intermediary building types so that you can say, these zones are appropriate. You might just go up to 2 to 3 units, and then once you get a little bit more urban, we're expanding that up to 12 units, but that's it. And then in very specific and limited zones, you can get more than 12. Because 12 is a good number of, after that, the building doesn't feel, it's really large. So accommodating it on a regular kind of urban block is more difficult. So anyways, so kind of utilizing that information, we did a couple, this was Noah's idea, which I thought was great, because it's always good if you're writing something to test it and to see how it works. So we did a couple different scenario tests with a proposed development that had come into the town previously. So if you look at the slide, we tried to orient you a little bit, but you see Rebo Road is on the left. This is kind of facing north. The Royal Oak Shopping Center is there, so you've got the Piggly Wiggly and Ace Hardware. And then that area to the right, on the rightmost image, was a 233-unit townhouse development that came in. And so as we started looking at it, so the idea was, what does the new ordinance encourage and to some degree require that you couldn't do this anymore? Because anytime you just get this homogeneous mixture of building types, even Savannah, which has probably more townhouses kind of per capita than most cities in the country, does not have this type of layouts of townhouses. You know, they're definitely broken up by other building types. It's just not, it doesn't lead to a great built environment. So what could you do in the new code in order to change that while not really reducing the density or the number of units? So you can kind of see the 1 unit type on the right, and then on the left, we were working with the 5 building types that are permitted in the zoning district to see the variety of kind of buildings that you could get. And, you know, by nature, kind of more green space and all of that kind of stuff when you're not just using this like single building type. And so the next slide, so that's just kind of, these are just quick kind of studies. This is just another quick study of something maybe a little simpler in this, a very similar kind of development pattern, but just how could you build value and create a wider variety of building types using the tools that you have?
No, I mean, that's a great way to do that. That's a great way to example. Like you said, on the right would be kind of the code now where it's just 233, kind of probably the exact same townhomes, just mass produced through there. Now you move over here, you get the same units if you're the developer, but you're getting, you know, cottage courts, detached cottages, townhomes, buildings, and that variety. And that's awesome. That's great, man. Yeah.
And I think the easiest way to visualize that even more is to just think about downtown Port Royal. Think about London Avenue and the differences of building types and housing types that are in our downtown, the areas that people love the most. There are 4 townhome units next to a single family, and then there's the Muse, and all of those work together and create a unique, interesting built environment where it feels comfortable to people. Mm-hmm. Doesn't feel like I got out of my car on the side of this little sidewalk next to a 36-unit apartment building and walked inside, and I'm not going outside until I have to drive somewhere else, you know? So that was the goal, and I think that these illustrations do a great job of just showing the potential that this single requirement, although a very detailed requirement, but the single concept goes a long way. So
is this y'all's favorite part?
I think it's my favorite part. I think it unleashes potential for new development plans.
I mean, it's kind of what we kind of said to you, and y'all really done that. So.
And it applies across the board when you hit that number of units. So it's not like there's a loophole where an apartment complex could be built anyway. Mm-hmm. This is across the board. If you are at 72 units or you're at 20 building sites, all of a sudden you've got to break it up.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm sure developers, I mean, you know more about that world, working with them. I mean, they're looking at the units and, you know, how many units do we get on it? As long as you're still providing them the opportunity. You're not saying you can't build anything. Mm-hmm. You're not saying, oh, shut it down, no building. You're just saying you got to do it this way. You got to do it in a diverse way and create that character, continue the character of Port Royal. And so that's kind of the best you can ask for.
Right. and I'm sure we'll notice the types of developers that are coming to speak with us after this hopefully is adopted, because there are developers that we've seen in the town that can't do this. It's just not their model. It's not the product that they do, because they aren't able to do multiple different types of buildings with multiple styles of unit counts within.
There's other places they can go to, right?
Mm-hmm. There sure are. Yeah, sure.
The other interesting thing about what you just said, Noah, is that there's, most of those developers, they actually can do it. They just don't want to. And I will never forget, I worked kind of in Noah's position at the city, and one of my first meetings was like a Dollar Tree or something on 170, and they came in and they said, well, because of your market and the analysis that we got, we're giving you our C building. We're not giving you our B building or our A building, which we have, which are much better. We're like, we don't want your C building, we want your A building. And like most of these tract home builders, they have other companies that have different names that do much more diverse building types. And they don't even want you to know that they're Pulte or, whoever it is, because you'll hold them to a higher standard, so.
Gotcha. Well, that's what y'all are doing, so thank you. And it's funny, we don't want your C building.
Right.
There you go. And so this is font smaller than I was expecting. This is kind of a brief overview of what else was done here. But again, there's more detail in the summaries that you were given previously. We've just further refined the things that we mentioned in those. So I'll just touch on some of them. We have simplified all the development standards, so there is not a separate multi-building development and then sections that talk about single-family and two-family, because we don't want to see developments that are one thing. We've created standards for waterfront lot subdivisions, so that property owners who might have 350 feet of property that's 70 feet wide, they don't. And then they site a home towards the water, they can then look at maybe subdividing the front towards the road and getting some value out of their property if they don't want that much land anymore. Standards for development adjacent to the Spanish Moss Trail, which is another thing that I thought was pretty cool that Lauren recommended. And that's looking at, there is property north of Rebo Road that fronts the trail at the end of Smilax, and that property has cool potential to front the trail and tie it in and make the trail as it comes into our downtown part of the community rather than tucked behind the houses like it is on the rest of the right of way. And that can also inform discussions with Safe Harbor as we talk about master planning the Bluff neighborhood and Rebo Village and so forth. Although it's not implemented in the PUD, it is something that with good faith discussions we can talk about those designs and work that in. The civic space types that we have in the code, which is parks or open spaces in new development, we looked at all of those and catered them to existing parks and civic spaces we have in the town. So if you need an example, you go to the code and it says, go look at Traveling Bowie Park for a pocket park, or go look at Bruce Edgerly for our regional park or something slightly larger for a sports complex, that kind of thing. So basing things on what we love about the town already allows us to more easily guide developers to what we want to see. The zoning district standards, that's Article 3. Lauren did a great job of summarizing a large chunk of the general requirements for each district into a chart. So anybody from a developer to a single-family homeowner who wants to put a shed on their property can go to a chart. They can be told what their zoning district is, and they now know what their setbacks are, what their parking requirements are. All of that good stuff is right there in one chart, and it's awesome. And then we looked at building height above grade, which we know in town we love our porches being up off the sidewalk a little bit, because you can say hey to your neighbors, but your neighbors aren't right on your porch walking past you on the sidewalk. It's a blend of the public realm in the street and the private realm in your home. And so we just clarified that to make sure that people are doing a nice foundation or a crawl space with skirting rather than building up a dirt pedestal and putting a slab on top of that, which we have seen every now and then in the past. Then just looking at our lot coverage percentages and our maximum lot depths, porch encroachments into our setbacks, the small details that do make a difference, are they appropriate for the zoning districts that they're applied in? And then the supplemental standards, which sounds like it's secondary, but it's really everything else you can possibly imagine. We looked at the building types and the frontage types, which is mostly porch types, but it also could be shop fronts or galleries over the sidewalk, that kind of thing. Looked at those to make sure that they're achieving the outcomes we want, and that we have more missing middle housing, which we've gone over with the number of units that you can do in buildings. The architectural standards, I think Lauren told me they were 31 pages long. That doesn't help anybody. And we had these 3 different types of levels of formality, they were called, where it went from low country vernacular to Main Street classical. And what we talked about was Port Royal doesn't have this scale where you go from a rural area with a little cottage to this classical downtown with these monumental buildings. We have quirks. There could be a Main Street style building next to the Pink House. We like it that way, right? That's what makes it unique for us. And so we made those standards into one easier, user-friendly chart, and we made sure that it was clear that it's okay to blend these different types of architecture and the formalities that go with them. And then finally, there was, in various sections, fences, off-street parking, landscaping and screening, exterior lighting, signs, and stormwater practices. We tied those all together, added some language to make sure that they were also tied into what we hold dear in the town, and making sure, again, you mentioned the parking, Kevin, that standards like parking, standards like exterior lighting, because we have issues with that as well sometimes, living in close quarters, signage, all of those things are catered to be designed well based on our requirements, and are clear for us to implement, because there were some confusions and some vague regulations. So we've cleaned all of that up. And the last thing that I wanted to go over, if you could go to the last slide, Brooke, is our principles. That's where I want to really just bring it back and remind everybody that within our comprehensive plan, which was most recently adopted in 2021, we have set a larger vision for the town. We have outlined our guiding principles, and then there are goals, objectives, and strategies within that plan that I look to and make sure that we're on the right track with the actions we're taking in the planning department and beyond. And I took a look at our principles again, and I just wanted to highlight these and mention that these were kept in mind while we were looking at the code amendments we were drafting and are now proposing. And they include things like design quality in the public realm for streets and parks, high quality neighborhood developments in a traditional structure. Urban form is important to our sense of place and quality of life. That means mixed land uses, human scaled design rather than large monolith buildings, buildings that are oriented both to public spaces and to the natural environment. Equity for our citizens, and a large way to do that is access to diverse housing choices, so that folks who have traditionally lived in the town or are new to the town have opportunity to find housing here. And finally, reuse and infill development. Our policies are shaped towards more cost-effective redevelopment of land that is already served, and we're trying to do that in numerous ways here as well. So I think we have kept ourselves aligned with the things that we hold dear and we have adopted in our comprehensive plan. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there's any remaining.
Any questions?
No, I think it's really good. It's very thorough, and I appreciate that. I know we've been working on this for what, you said 8 months. I was thinking it was more like 10 months.
At least
I
the
know-
conversations, yeah. I
Right.
know August last year, we had our first planning commission meeting where we talked about it.
So I definitely don't want to slow the process down. I think you've done a great job with it. And also, I know we wanted it to coincide with our moratorium. So I feel like we haven't put the cart before the horse, we put the horse before the cart. We've done everything that we should do. Now, I know, and we've done it in the public. We haven't done it in any back rooms or had any dealings like that. It's been out and open for folks to see, and folks have come and seen it.
Correct.
And I know we've recently been reached out to by the chamber. Were we able to share some information with them?
Yeah, everything that has been used in any of the public meetings we've had was provided to the chamber.
Good, thank you. I appreciate you doing that. I'm on board with this. I think you did a great job. Thank y'all very much.
Yeah, I think it's a great job. I really appreciate what you've done and considered what we want in the town, and I don't know that we could have done anything better. I think this is awesome.
Councilman Guerrero?
Same what they said, man. I mean, we just keep, kicking the same horse. You guys did a great job. I mean, thorough, comprehensive, and really kept what we asked you to do at the forefront of what your task. I mean, you guys just, I think you guys knocked it out of the park. It looks so cool. I like that it trips something when you do this thing. If you think we're gonna count the units, or we're gonna count the lot size, whatever it is, it's gonna trip you to almost fall in line with what we're asking you to do. First, we're gonna ask you to come along, and then it's gonna kind of force its function if you try to go a different route with it. So, again, I personally appreciate that you did that, because again, there are companies that have 3 and 4 arms that can do these things. It's just not cost effective for them, and I can appreciate that as a business guy. I get it. That's just not what this is. Our community deserves to have something like this where they don't have to necessarily get in their car to go get some kind of service. They can get on their sidewalk and walk where they need to get to. So thank you guys so much. I know it's been a lot of hours, and we appreciate that.
Again, just very proud of the work y'all done in the town, in this council, and the planning commission. I see Ms. Ailing back there as well. I know you served on all those meetings, and it's one of those things we know where we live. We know this place is growing. I mean, I don't know if you saw, there was an article that came out the other day that said it's the low country technically. So, but yeah, Jasper County is the fastest growing county in the United States of America. Hardyville is the fastest growing city in the state of South Carolina. And while those aren't Port Royal, they're not that far. We've seen the growth here. We see the growth that's coming. This is America. People are free to travel. People are free to buy land. People are free to build on it. But what you can do is the people that live in the area, that live in the communities, they can, take some initiative in that responsible growth. You always hear that phrase, responsible growth. We're going to manage it wisely. And that's exactly what you guys have done, and try to work on that. So that's huge, considering where we live and what's the growth that we've experienced and the growth that we're going to continue to experience. So thank you all for, again, putting the horse before the cart.
Yeah, and the parking.
Yes.
You thought about parking.
Yep.
I think often too many communities don't think about parking. Let's just build it.
Yep.
Where are you going to park these people?
Yep.
So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ongoing. And just a reminder, I will be back at least with some final additional amendments to things like definitions and making sure that the purpose statements align and everything. So it's not the final end, but it is the meat and potatoes of it. And keep you updated on that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Keep that council briefing rolling.
Oh, yeah, we've got lots of topics for
Yes.
tonight. Speed humps.
What?
Yeah, I'm sure
What?
we're all
Oh,
hearing
what's that?
lots. I know we are. Good, the bad, the ugly, we're
talking?
hearing it all. They're being installed. We have approximately 28 between downtown Port Royal as well as north of Rebo Road. Quite a few of them have been incorrectly installed. These are supposed to be 12-foot wide, 4 inches tall, and we're finding quite a few of them are not to those specs. The contractor is going back around, removing the speed hump. They will be able to melt it down and redo the sizing on it. We're getting temporary markings on them, so they should be coming around. A lot of them are marked right now. That's temporary, and then we'll have the thermoplastic go on in about 2 weeks. Signs have been ordered, they just haven't come in yet. But, we are getting some pretty good feedback from the people that were having the speed strips in front of their homes. And, we're just we're tweaking it and we're getting there.
And I'll say something really quick on that, because I'm sure we all have gotten a lot of phone calls and a lot of comments since, I guess, last Thursday when they started going in. And I hope you heard, though, that we do recognize some of those were put in wrong, they were put in incorrectly, they were too large. And as soon as we've noticed that, that's being worked on now. So they're gonna be uniform. As you heard, there was a design for them. It kind of looked like they got better at them as they put them in, like the first couple ones might not have been the standard, and then, you know, after you put in a few more, they kind of get better. So the ones that are wrong have been
They're in the process of being corrected.
fixing those. But I do just want to say, though, that I want everyone to kind of see that all this stuff ties together. The port development, the design reviews, the speed bumps, all of that goes in, and it just talks about this town and the growth that this town's experiencing, the growth that this town's going to continue to experience. I know we all see it. I see, you see more and more tourists coming to Port Royal. We're popping up in those magazines as top 10 best kept secret in South Carolina, best little beach town. Like, we're starting to get on all of those lists, and people are coming, and that's a good thing, because, I mean, most of us came here. I'm one of those, and we love it here. And if you look around, you can see tourists. You know tourists, they're looking around, they got that look on their face of, where am I going? Where's the Spanish Moss Trail? Where's Madison's? And they're trying to figure stuff out. They don't know the roads. They don't know the speed limits. They don't know what they're looking for. We're going to get more tourists. We're going to get more citizens. And as this place grows, our town is so unique in the sense, one of the things I love about the village is that the diversity of transportation in it. Think about it. On our streets, you have every single type of transportation you can imagine, from pedestrians to semi-trucks, scooters, golf carts, bicycles, boats, trucks pulling boats, a lot of golf carts. And all of those things share these roads together. And some of these roads aren't that big. So we lowered the speed limit to 15 miles an hour. It would be amazing if we could hire 100 police officers and have a cop at every corner. But while we can't do that, a speed bump can be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And all this is just a measure to create safety for families, children, the citizens, the tourists, and again, those are those people that are riding their golf carts, those people that are walking their kids. We want everybody, we don't want anybody to be hurting their, damaging their cars. That is not the intent of this. Again, we're fixing the ones that were too big, but just know that the purpose behind that is just the safety of the town and its citizens, and also doing that now before this port is developed, before the growth that is coming. So I just want to say that because we did, I know, like I said, some were big, and I'm sure we all heard about it. And again, we've recognized that, we're fixing those, and again, we're just trying to make a safe neighborhood for everybody, so.
Yeah, what's it?
All right.
Yeah.
West Paris Avenue, we have the stormwater project going on over there. They're installing sidewalks, prepping the road. It's moving along. We have just a couple more weeks on it before the end of June. We're expecting it to be completed, so it'll be nice to have our West Paris back open. As soon as we complete that, then we'll be putting out for bid for the village section of it. Let's see, Paris Avenue Streetscape Improvement Project. We had a pre-bid meeting and also a public meeting on May 28th. The bids are due on June 18th. The meeting went really well. We had probably about 12 different property owners, businesses that showed up. Great conversations. We even recorded it for those that weren't able to show up, so we can share it. We have plans. We're happy to sit down, discuss things, but we're very excited for this project to start moving.
And I do want to say thank you all for doing that, because I heard from some of those business owners, because it is going to be disruptive. And, if you're sitting there and you're, Frank's, or you're the pizza place, or you're Corner Perk, you're wondering, how do people get to my business while you're tearing up the road? It's going to be a great thing once it's done, but it is going to be disruptive to those businesses. So I think it was great that you reached out to them beforehand, brought them in, and worked with them about this is what's going to happen with this process, and try to minimize that disruption as much as possible. So thank you all for doing that to them. I think that's really important.
No problem. And we are, once we approve a contractor, we're going to do the same thing once we have that contractor. So that way that communication can be back and forth. They'll know who the site supervisor is, shutdown times, trying to work around hours. It's important. Port Royal isn't shutting down just because we're working on this project, and it's important for everyone to know that. Let's see, Sands Beach Causeway, a lot going on there, really exciting. We've got power for the underlighting, that's on for us. We have signage. I met out today at 1 o'clock when it was pouring out with the sign guy to get all the positions figured out. Just we're waiting for the weather to cooperate, and they'll be back out to install the remainder signs. One has been put up. We have another 6 more to go. And the gate is on site. Posts have been installed. I believe Monday they came out to install that, and beginning of next week we'll have the gate up as well. So it's going to be here before we know it to have everything done there.
And this gate will be,
So it'll
Dusk
go
to dawn.
along just like what the hours were for dusk to dawn. Is what we had. The police department would go down. They had the chain link fence. Instead, now it would automatically go down. There's a sensor if someone is still remaining on the other side, whether
Not
it's a
trapped.
vehicle or a pedestrian. The sensor would catch.
See you in the morning.
Exactly. We don't want anyone, staying overnight that wasn't expecting to. So.
okay, great.
Yeah, we've got that covered, and we were going to wait till later, but I'm going to ask Chief Ogden come up because I'm really excited about what he has to kind of fill you guys in what we have going on down towards the Sands Beach area as well.
Thank you, Brooke. We're in the early stages of planning an event for just before next month's work session, July 2nd, I believe it is. Right before that work session, we're going to partner with a foundation called Aiden Perry's Foundation. It's a foundation that Aiden passed away in a drowning accident, and the mother has started this foundation where they provide life rings to communities. And Port Royal and the 4th of July coming up at the Sands, we thought it was a great marriage for this fund to be able to install some life rings along Port Royal. So she wants to come tell her story, so I'm not going to steal her whole thunder. She has a great story to tell. She has a great foundation. Us, PD, and staff have met with them on Zoom, and again, we're in the early stages of planning this and hope to have council on site right before the work session in July to do this program. So,
Great, absolutely.
anything else you'd like to share?
No, well, we'll have 2, I think we're looking at 2 life rings on the boardwalk, one on the landing and one out towards the beach.
Yeah.
And,
As part of the foundation, they essentially are providing these rings, a certain amount of them for us, and we're doing the install, like the little hooks or poles or whatever they need to be on. But they're the typical orange rings that you would see in places near water where you can throw out and help someone if they in an emergency in the water.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
and this is based out of Florida. We would be the first one out of Florida, first state out that you'd be doing this at, so.
Yeah.
Wow,
Great. Cool.
Yep.
great.
Thank you.
for that, Chief. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Chief.
Splash pad, we're moving forward with the splash pad. We've submitted some plans over to the county for review. They've given us feedback. We're doing just a couple little edits to it, and then we'll be sending it over to Beaufort Jasper Water for their approval and feedback. Talking about the articles, if you check out Local Life, the magazine over in Bluffton, Hilton Head, there's an article about splash pads, and they reached out to us. So it's noted that we're the designs in there, as well as that we're the first ones north of the Broad to have a splash pad. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Naval Hospital contract has been awarded, and SCDOT expect completion in October of 2025. About time, right?
How long has it been?
And that's for the sidewalk.
Before I've been
right?
working here, I know it's been
For a
worked
long
on,
time.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's for the sidewalk, right, man?
Yes, exactly. The goal of that is, I mean, people can get to, we have a lot of people like to walk that bridge, and if you come back, you see that there's that kind of walking path. And I've seen families, women pushing strollers over that thing, and they're just in the dirt, and so the goal is just to get, again, just connectability, make it safe, where you could be at the park, you can hop on a sidewalk, walk the bridge, get back, and never have to really, risk your life. So that's the goal of that. So.
We are going to be getting all of our downtown street signs power washed and just straightened, so that's going to be happening in the next week or 2.
Thank you.
And then just an update on Cherry Hill Oak Tree staff, Michael Murphy and the Friends of the Cherry Hill Oak Tree. The lightning protection has been installed. Mulch has been, they've already put some mulch down. They weren't really anticipating how big of an area that they were going to need, so there's some more mulch needed. So it's nice to see some progress being made over there. I know we're ready, staff's ready to sit down to speak with the county and start just working on plans. Just want to see, what we can do over there.
That's great.
And that's all that I have, unless you guys have any questions or.
No.
Thank you. No, thank you again, right there. Keep hitting it over and over. Must do complete ongoing capital projects, and you just rattled off quite a few of them. So I will give an update really quick, just because I call him once a week. Mr. Dean Moss, about the Spanish Moss Trail. He notified me his latest update was that the bid has been accepted for the crossing, and that county is in the process of reviewing that bid. So we've got a bid in, and they're reviewing the bid, and that's kind of the latest on that, so. Okay. If nothing else on council briefing, we got to review the agenda for June 11th, 2025 council meeting.
All right, it looks like you guys have a bunch of minutes to approve for Lisa. We have two presentations. One is Walk for Water. Chris Ramsey will be here to present, and also a oath for a new police officer next Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
We didn't have it on the proposed, but we meant to have a first reading for ordinance 2025-10, and ordinance to amend Articles 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the Development Code of the Town of Port Royal, South Carolina. You guys heard a presentation by Noah and Lauren earlier, so we'll have the first reading next week. Second readings will be the second and final reading for 2025-5, an ordinance to amend as follows: Section 1 of Ordinance 2024-10 to provide for the levy of taxes for ordinary town purposes in the town of Port Royal, South Carolina for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2025, and to provide for the expenditures thereof. As we discussed earlier, we had a 5:30 budget workshop meeting. We do anticipate a budget that's balanced with $11,135,670. That does include a reduction of the millage from 74 mills to 72 mills, and still includes a cost of living adjustment of 3%, as well as the increases to all of our insurances and whatnot.
Great.
And then 2025-6, an ordinance to approve the court department budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2025. The anticipated budget for that department is $249,315. Ordinance 2025-7, an ordinance to amend and restate the planned unit development for the Port of Port Royal tract originally enacted by Ordinance 2011-17 as amended by the Ordinance 2017-20 and Ordinance 2021-25 and other matters related thereto. Had a special meeting on that, and I think we covered everything. Have our first reading that was just completed.
Yeah.
2025-8, an ordinance to further amend the development agreement between the town of Port Royal, South Carolina, and Safe Harbor Port Royal LLC under the terms of that certain third amendment to development agreement and other matters related thereto. Once again, we just had our first reading for that. 2025-9, an ordinance to authorize the exchange of certain properties with Safe Harbor Marina, Port Royal LLC, wherein the town of Port Royal shall transfer by deed certain properties of the town to Safe Harbor Marina, Port Royal LLC, and the town shall accept deeds to certain properties from Safe Harbor Marina, Port Royal LLC, acceptance of property and license rights related to the Henry Robinson Boardwalk and planned extensions thereto, ratifying the acceptance of the Sands Beach Boat Landing and related dock facilities, ratifying conveyance of that certain perpetual easement for public use and access and other matters related thereto. Council action items, we have approval of tree trimming contract for Naval Heritage, similar to what we've done over at the Live Oak. We just cleaned up the moss, any pruning that we needed done. We reached out to multiple contractors. We received 2 submittals, and we are making a recommendation for the lowest bid being of $41,000.
This is cleaning them up, deadwood removal, Spanish moss, snow removal, or anything, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
And then we'll have the appointment to the Beaufort County Solid Waste and Recycling. You've heard from Mr. Jim Berry this evening, so you'll have that appointment. And the only other item that we have is executive session for personnel matters, town manager's
Town
evaluation, which we
manager
do every
evaluation.
year in June.
All right, so that's the agenda for next week. Any questions or comments from council or staff on that?
Not on the agenda, no.
Okay. Okay, up next, we're back in our public hearing. Up next, important dates. We got Thursday, June 5th, 2025, Design Review Board meeting at 5:30. Wednesday, June 11th is council meeting at 6:30 in this building. Anything else council would add for important dates?
For council and staff, the Shadow Moss Property Owner Association has asked me to extend an invite for our annual 4th of July butt cook-off that we do this year. It's on June 28th. Judging starts at 6 o'clock. Mayor, they've asked if you'd like to serve as judge for that.
All right, absolutely.
We got.
You cooking?
Am I?
Yes, sir.
I am.
All right,
I am smoking some butts.
there we go.
Fire department, his Deputy Chief Ross Vezin is scheduled the truck to come out there and spray the kids a little bit, just to keep them cooled down. But it's an annual thing that we do, and this year they saw it fit that they invite the council.
That's great. I
and
love
see if you
that.
can make it there, and then I'll ask Van also if he's available. They wanted to see if you would be judged too. June 28th, Saturday.
Yep.
Okay. What
Yep.
time?
Can do it.
It started kind of gathering around about 5, but
Okay.
judging goes at 6.
Okay.
That's great. Tell them we said thank you so much for that
Yes.
invitation.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for including us.
Yeah, we love that. Thank you for that invitation very much. I'll throw one on there. There is, the Chamber of Commerce has its legislative reception this Friday at 3:30, I believe. It's at Habersham. It's a great time to come out. They invite all of the elected officials, so the City of Beaufort, Town of Port Royal, Beaufort County, and then all of our state representatives as well, too, will be there to kind of just give updates about what's been going on in the legislative process. As you know, at the State House, they just finished session, and so they can give some updates on that. And then the county and the municipalities can give updates about, our priorities and what we've been working on and what we hope to do. So that's this Friday at 3:30 out at Habersham through the Beaufort Chamber of Commerce. So legislative reception. That's
Very
the
nice.
only one I got. Anything else to add? Okay. Important dates, done. Up next, public comment. I didn't receive any sign-ups, but if anybody has a public comment, it is council workshop, so.
I was just say, Friends has got something up their sleeve. They always do.
I don't. I wasn't planning on talking, but Scott Clark, 1012 11th Street. I just wanted to thank council and staff for everything that they're doing to make this town a great place to live. You guys for working on the safe harbor agreement, including NOAA for the development agreement, or development code, and especially to Brooke for the speed humps. You guys all know Patty and I have been complaining for 17 years about 11th Street, and I just want to say they're working.
Good.
When people head in towards Fish Camp, that first speed bump on 11th Street is painful, but they learn. But by the time they come back, they go the speed limit, and the speed bump it works just perfectly. So you go the speed limit, no damage to your car, no nothing. So thank you very much, town.
Thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
We say it sets the tone, Scott.
Yeah.
That first one sets the tone.
Okay. All right, public comment, okay. Anything from council, anything else from council for the betterment of
Council
town?
comment?
Yes, sir, go
Yeah,
ahead.
sure. I'm going to jump in.
Yes, sir, please
A
do.
few weeks ago, we were at a meeting, and we recognized our fire department for an ISO rating of 1, and that's great. And thank you for everything you do for that. Tonight, I want to recognize our police department. I don't know if you know this, but we're proud to share that Port Royal has been named the 7th safest city in the state of South Carolina. This recognition reflects the dedication of our officers, the support of the town staff and leadership, strong partnership with the community. You're making Port Royal a safe place. I look on social media and I see the bus that you're making, and I think that sends a great message. So thank you for your leadership. Thanks for what you're doing. Appreciate you.
And them speed bumps.
That's all I've got.
Yes, sir. Thank you so
No,
much.
I
That's
just
pretty
think
cool.
that
7.
everything's cool.
7, number 7 in the state of
Number
South Carolina.
7.
That's
I'm trying to think
amazing.
how many municipalities there are. I think it's 230 or 40 something municipalities in South Carolina.
Beaufort City's not even in the top.
Yeah, okay. So 7 out of 240. Don't quote me on 240, but it's around there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
village is higher.
Huh?
I think the village is much higher.
Okay. Any comments?
No, I just think that everybody's done a great job, Noah and Brooke and Lisa. Thank y'all for helping keep everything up, and, you know, without y'all, we couldn't have all these great comments, and thanking everybody for what they do, coming to these meetings, help us with your input, tell us what you think you need in your community, and, you know, we're trying to do what's right, and we'll continue to do that until we're not here. Thank you.
Councilman Guerrero.
I do have a couple things, again, for the staff, really. You know, a lot of things when you look at big kind of time politics, politicians aim to do well, but a lot of that rests on the shoulders of their staffs. So they go into office and then they trust folks to do the things that their constituents have asked them to do. And it looks like they're on their own agenda oftentimes because they can't supervise every aspect of it. So I have to say thank you, well, first to the council for the clear guidance that we've been able to kind of derive and grant our staff. But to you guys, and Ben, he's not here, but you guys have stayed dead focused on what our citizens want out of their town. And you guys, I mean, I just can't say thank you enough. You know, coming in here, the planning sessions you guys have, the committee meetings, and just the open dialogue with everybody. And, you know, we'd go into meetings and, you know, as a senior enlisted guy, you're in charge of kind of keeping it all together. And when everybody would leave there happy, I'd put them all back in the room. There's absolutely no way that 10 people from different walks of life can all leave a room on a problem and agree on a solution the first time. You know, and I appreciate the opportunity you guys give others in the community to contribute to what our problem is. It's our problem collectively, you know, and then giving them our experience and giving them our expertise and everybody else who does it around us, and put all those things together to make it work. Because again, it's really awesome, and again, it just goes without saying, but we have to say it from time to time, and we have to make you all blush on camera, and it's just funny to us, but to you guys, I hope you go back home and you pat yourself on the back from time to time, because, you know, Major General Glenn, when I was a young recruiter in 2002, he'd be like, "Did you tell yourself you love you today?" And I was like, "What? No, certainly. I didn't do that." He's like, "You know what? Today might be the only day you say that you hear that. And it's important for you to go home and pat yourself on the back every once in a while because you're doing a hell of a job, and we appreciate that."
Thank you.
Great, absolutely. Again, thank you all for being here. You know, this is it's a beautiful town. We all love it. Thank you for participating, being part of this. Council, staff, I'll let everybody get out of here. We are in the middle of summertime. Everybody have a fun and safe time out there in Port Royal. At that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. Have a good night,
Good night,
Port Royal.
Port Royal.